Hello ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Kerbal Space Program and the Interplanetary Chase. In my previous episode we sent a rover to the moon and subsequently broke the antenna off and kind of defeated the point of us using our scan satellite here in the polar orbit as a relay, because obviously the rover has got nothing to talk to other than directly to the space centre, so you join us today in our attempt to return the scan satellite back to Kerbin and possibly get some science as we set up a moon ejection here. So far so good. It is from a polar orbit, so obviously our orbit, our predicted orbit at least, is a little bit inclined, a little bit elliptical. However, assuming we can bring either of those two nodes back to within the atmosphere, then there shouldn't be a problem as we go up to our apoapsis here. Going to start pointing progrades in order to, of course, burn and bring our orbit down a little bit. Periapsis going down. Lovely, we're going to bring that within the atmosphere, as you can see, 30 kilometres. And a bit of a graphical bug here, so we're just going to decouple the actual satellite and reload our save. Wonderful. So we close the cargo bay. And time warp to the atmosphere as we prepare for a very steep re-entry. As you can see, we're looking good for resources. Just making sure our parachutes are ready to go. And for once, we're actually re-entering in a sunrise, which is a nice change. Usually we re-enter Kerbin's atmosphere on the dark side as we do atmospheric scan here. So we're ready to close the orbital scanner. Our solar panels have gone kaput, but that's fine because they were not the retractable ones. Speaking of retracting things, we are going to retract our Communitron 16s here. Looks like we missed a chance to do an atmosphere analysis, but no matter. There is another one here which we're going to do and keep, and another one. And we're going to collect all that data. This is a good opportunity to get this data actually, because we haven't bought the atmosphere analysis in any other probes yet, I think. So of course this is the first time we're able to collect this data from this particular environment. Once again, Heat Shield is definitely putting in the work, and those cargo bay doors might be doing a good job of providing us with some additional drag to slow us down, of course. And it looks like we're through the worst of the atmosphere now, so we're going to close the cargo bay and fire our drogue chutes, and they'll pop when they're ready to slow us down enough. As you can see, they've just gone. That slowed us down enough to pop the main parachutes. If we do another atmosphere analysis, we're going to get quite a bit of science from this, I imagine. All 4 parachutes are now deployed, and they will open when they're ready as we descend through the clouds here. 6,000, 5,000. Actually, I should probably think about changing it to ground level there. Our altimeter, here we go, 1.5 kilometres above ground level. And all our parachutes have opened at 800 metres. Lovely. So we descended around 6 meters per second as we prepare to touch down here and return this vessel, and of course take home a hefty chunk of science. So we are 20 meters, 10, and touchdown. Atmosphere analysis from the ground, of course. Keep that, collect that into our experiment return unit and recover. That takes us up to 262 science total, with 136 science earned. As you can see, that's not a small amount by any means. So I'm very happy with that as we warp to sunrise here, just as we have returned during night time at the Space Centre. And of course, we're going to look as to what we may be able to spend this science on. Having a look at advanced landing, command modules perhaps. I feel like that would be quite useful if we plan on going interplanetary, of course, precision engineering with some smaller decouplers, new probe cores, relay antennas. I think that would be very useful actually. We'll think about that. Of course, octagonal strut as well. Composites, we can't quite afford this yet, but it's well worth looking into. Advanced metalworks, volume containment, actuators, if we want to build anything robotic. We don't have much in terms of specialised control for aircraft yet, but I think we are going to go for precision engineering. And of course we can only afford aerodynamics now, but we're going to hold fire on that. So, what we're going to do now is obviously, we have a comms network around Kerbin, but that's relatively short range. And what I'd like to do today is I'd like to build something a bit more, not necessarily long range, because I don't quite think we have the kit for that just yet, but maybe medium range. So basically, these ones theoretically will be put into a polar orbit, and we'll be able to talk to all the other relays to extend the range of our comms network beyond Kerbin and the Moon, and maybe even Minmus, but of course we'll have to wait and see as we go ahead. And essentially we're relying on the big relay antenna on top there, which none of our other comm satellites have. So we're also adding this extendable communitron here just for redundancy reasons, of course, as we move for batteries there. And so far so good. Now might be worth us putting a solar panel, of course, just a passive one, in case we forget to extend the solar panels and run out of power for whatever reason. It's always good to have this kind of backup generation, so we can ensure that we haven't deployed just a brick in space as we save this as for Comsat Mark 2, of course. Now that's ready to go. So from here we need to think of building a vessel that will, of course, deploy our satellites. Although we did forget to change the route parts. Oh no, we didn't. I thought we did. Maybe that was last episode. Oh well. Nonetheless, it's high time we build the deployer vessel as we try and find a good looking adapter for our rocket here, as we just end up putting a little fuel tank here. Batteries, of course, because I want to put nuclear engines on this fuel tank, and that means that given their efficiency, we may have a bit more fuel left when we're done with the satellite, and as such I want to attempt to return this particular stage, or not necessarily return, but to dispose, so we don't end up with orbital debris, especially radioactive orbital debris. Anyway, this stage is pretty much done, so now we're just adding a fairing and put it above the satellite there. Wonderful. And I'm thinking in terms of maybe putting an adapter there. As you can see, that's worked well. That will increase our fuel on the lower stages as well, which is always welcome. And of course, clamshell deploy, and set the ejection force to be at its full. From now, we just need to build our lifter stage. So we have a couple of fuel tanks. We have a cheetah engine, which we will eventually end up replacing because that thing isn't the most powerful. But of course, it looks cool at first, and if it looks cool, then odds are it's going to work, right? So anyway, SRBs, of course, we're going to use our hammer engines, never get old. I'm pretty sure these are the hammer ones, they might be thumpers, I can never remember the name. Regardless, nose cone on top, followed by some separatrons to pull them away when it comes to staging those. Move them down slightly as they are clipping out the other sides. Also strap them up, lovely. Now we need to think about some reaction wheels, because of course this particular stage isn't looking too good when it comes to manoeuvrability, and of course some winglets to stabilise our ascent. Make sure it's centred for rocket. Again, we are going to quickly look at replacing the engine, because I realised that the main motor we had wasn't exactly the most powerful, right? So we're going to replace that with a Bobcat. And well, I say a Bobcat, that's essentially two engines in one, but still. And that should give us a bit of a better thrust to weight ratio. Once again, just making sure everything is as it should be. Oh yeah, of course, adding some parachutes on these SRBs is given that they pull away from a vessel, we may be able to return them and reuse them, right? So ready to go, and we begin our ascent with a very nice looking rocket, I gotta say. I like how the fairing kind of sits flush with the rest of the rocket there, with the whole payload as well. It's not sticking out anywhere, and it makes it look like it's supposed to be there. Wonderful, as we break through 5 kilometers and Mach 1. Our SRBs are about to run out of fuel, which they do, so we decouple those, and the parachutes fire. Wonderful. Just making sure that our prograde marker is pointing directly north, as once again we are trying to put these in polar orbits. Breaking through 35 kilometers now. And our apoapsis is coming up to 100 kilometers. I think we're going to aim to put these ones at roughly 250 kilometers because the, if I remember correctly, of course, the main comms network is around 100. So if we can put this above, then that means that odds are we should always have a satellite, hopefully, to connect to. So right now, apoapsis is at 200 kilometers. Just deploying our antennas and our solar panels to ensure that we maintain connection, but we don't forget to put those out by the time we're done with this particular vessel. Coasting up to the apoapsis now, ever so slowly. Going to point towards the horizon. Once again, burn a little bit to bring our periapsis up from the negatives. And that stage runs out of fuel, so we're now down to our nuclear engine, and as you can see at this particular altitude we have plenty of delta V. So of course we're going to push that up to 250 kilometers as planned. The delta V was around 1,400 meters per second on this one stage, which is why I put in such an effort, of course, to research nuclear propulsion, which is always positive, especially for Kerbals. I mean, you know, nuclear propulsion, that kind of insinuates that it's radioactive, but I think there's nothing wrong with our already green Kerbals glowing, you know, an extra shade of green perhaps owing to the nuclear propulsion. Not that it matters with this vessel because it's unmanned, but that's besides the point. The scientists down at the Space Centre, of course, had to put in the man hours to research and engineer these particular motors, so, you know, all's well that ends well. And of course, we've just passed our apoapsis, but we're still going to burn because we need to kind of circularise our orbit a little bit. As you can see, we are at 254 by 254, give or take 500 meters, and that is our first ComSat in a lovely circular polar orbit. And of course, because we put a reflectron and a drone core on this nuclear stage, we can return this. Well, again, I've already said this, not return, but ensure that it doesn't remain in space, right? As we bring our periapsis down to the negatives once again and shut down that engine, which means we're ready to go back to the Space Centre. And what we're doing now is, obviously, we have a medium-range satellite around Kerbin. This time, we're sending one to the moon. Because of course our rover has nothing to talk to other than directly to the Space Centre, which is less than ideal. So once again, same old ascents as we break Mach 1, this time going for a 90-degree orbit. Equatorial, I believe it is. Yeah, equatorial orbit. Decouple the boosters, parachutes deploy. Lovely, so far so good. Braking 20 kilometers now. I noticed somebody in the previous episode mentioned that my rover delivery system, the Sky Crane, didn't actually have any reaction wheels. So if we ever come around to using that particular system again, I'll need to put some gyroscopes or some reaction wheels, or use a different probe core, because of course that could possibly be used to lift the rover and relocate it. The system we use was simply designed to, of course, just drop the rover off, and then we kind of dispose of that particular system, which has worked so far. Of course, we've only deployed one rover. Coasting up to our apoapsis now. And of course we're ever so slightly burning and deploying our deployables here just to ensure we don't forget. Periapsis is coming up from above for negatives now. Wonderful. Our orbit around Kerbin here isn't particularly important because of course we are going to use this orbit as somewhere to eject to the moon, right? And obviously given that the moon is right there in front of us, I think it's safe to just continue burning until we end up with a moon encounter, right? It's literally just coming up from the horizon. And we start pushing our orbits out towards the moon, hopefully. Oh yeah, I would like to give a quick shout out to someone who may or may not be watching this video, going by the name of Alamo Vampire, who mentioned me on the Kerbal Space Program forums. I wasn't expecting to see my channel anywhere on there, but here we go. So thank you very much for tuning in. And of course, we now have our moon encounter. So we're just bringing the moon periapsis down a little bit, and of course warp into our manoeuvre. So going to try and point prograde here and circularize, because you may or may not have noticed that we don't necessarily have that much delta V left. There's of course the moon transfer, or not transfer, but oh yes, it was a transfer actually. The moon transfer did use quite a lot of fuel, or at least quite a lot of fuel in comparison to how much we're carrying. So no matter though, because as long as we circularise, then we should be okay. And as you can see, we very much have done. Our moon apoapsis is approaching the 2 million metre mark. So we're going to have a look at our ascending and descending nodes here, and of course change our inclination and attempt to put ourselves into a polar orbit. Problem is, doing so is changing our apoapsis and periapsis as well, so we need to ensure that it's okay. We're trying to change our nodes, of course, so we have a 90-degree inclination, which I believe we have done. So we're going to find our manoeuvre here, and of course warp to it. There we go. Ooh, little bit off centre there. Warp to the manoeuvre. So far so good. And interestingly, our manoeuvre was right above the rover, although we seem to have completely overshot. But no matter, our ascending and descending nodes haven't exactly changed. So we're going to just continue burning here as per. And we are, of course, going to correct our orientation. And I think this might be worth another pass, given that we've passed our ascending node now, which is exactly at 50 degrees, so a little bit more, and we should end up with that at 90. So, of course, just setting up a different manoeuvre, just to finish this off. 90.1, 90.1, 89.9, 90 on the dot. That will do. Lovely. Once again, we do need to warp back round to this particular manoeuvre once we've realigned ourselves on the nav ball here. And we did overshoot, unfortunately, so we've had to set up a different manoeuvre, which we've got lined up here. And we're executing now. We're almost there, and I think that will do quite nicely. Now, of course, we do need to circularise, so we're going to bring our orbit out a little bit, and I'm going to try and push it out to roughly the 1 million metres mark. It will, of course, need to correct from our theoretical new apoapsis, but that's easily done. I think we have more than enough delta V for these two manoeuvres before we dispose of our nuclear sage, let's say. As we push our apoapsis out, 1.03, not bad, and I think that will do rather nicely. And of course, once again, we're going to point ourselves retrograde now, which means we'll end up pointing progrades come our new apoapsis. And as you can see, that has worked out quite nicely. Stability assist, and we're going to burn just to ensure that our periapsis meets our apoapsis so that we've got an equal orbit. A little bit more, 1.03 by 1.01. It's not perfect, but at the same time, it doesn't have to be. So of course, we deploy the satellite, rename the vessel, disable the engine, and that is our satellite done. Now, of course, time for the fun part. And because we're only above the moon, I figured, you know, why wouldn't you guys want to see this? We're actually going to stay with this particular part of the probe, and we're going to follow it all the way down to the lunar surface because explosions are cool, right? And thankfully, it looks like we're crashing down on the light part of the moon, so you can actually see what's going on. And hopefully not crash into our rover. And as you can see, we've lost control because we've lost contact with Kerbin and the probes. Thankfully, we've already disabled the nuclear engine, so there won't be any radiation. Well, not more than there kind of already is, as we have an awesome little crash down there. And that is mission complete. Now, speaking of completing missions, welcome back aboard the Kerbal Orbital Lab. Have a look at how much science we've got. 496 out of 500. It's time to reap what we've sown, ladies and gentlemen, as we time warp to completion. And we have 500 science ready to transmit back to the Space Centre. It's about time that we've got this this kind of mother loads, because well, we've been waiting to do this ever since, of course, we've managed to put this thing into orbit, right? So, point progrades, make sure that all of our solar panels are getting as much power as they could possibly generate. And we are going to begin transmitting the science. And of course this is time warped, as, not time warped, but this is time accelerated because it can take a little while. And of course I was a little bit anxious if you would have a look in the top right of your screen, ladies and gents, you'd see that our electric charge is depleting very, very quickly. However, I did some number crunching, and if I've done it correctly, which I did at the time, you will be happy to know, then we will only just have enough electric charge to transmit all this data, because as you can see, we're slightly more half than done when it comes to uploading, and we have about the same amount of electric charge left. So 70%. 75, and we have more than a quarter of our electric charge left, so we will be absolutely fine given its given the rate of which we're consuming the electric charge here. So 90%, 95, and 100. 500 science added, and we finished that with, I think if I clocked that correctly, around 80 electric charge units compared to our 3060 that we currently have on board. So we're going to, of course, tell Albert and the crew to stand down and clean out the experiment base, as their work on board the Kerbal Orbital Lab, as it stands, is done. Wonderful stuff, ladies and gents. And back to the Space Centre we go, with a nice total of 602 science points, owing to the very brave Kerbinauts on board the Orbital Lab. Now, on that note, we are coming up to the end of today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, so I would like to say thank you guys very much for watching. If you did enjoy today's episodes, please do like and subscribe for more Kerbal Space Program and related content, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Once again, thank you guys very much for watching.